What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Men's Club Podcast, episode 5. We're so happy to be back with you again. Before we get started, a few, business orders. We're still having a few technical difficulties with the social media, so just bear with us on that. I don't think the links are getting added to the description properly. It's a mix-up with YouTube. And then also, just as far as the Twitter goes, I apologize if you can't find it. There's like a big, long alphanumeric string. It should be at Men's Club, but there's been some issues getting a hold of that. But be sure to go ahead and like and subscribe to those. We do have content coming out. It's slowly rolling out. The snowball's kind of building up, but we'll get there. Just bear with us. We said from the beginning, this is a learning curve and a growing process. But again, we're so happy to have you back. I'm TJ.
I'm RD.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Pops.
And kicking it off, I think RD, you want to take the lead this time?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about, especially America right now is not in the best of state right now. It's stuff's on fire.
Oh, physically you meant?
Yeah.
Not the best state physically.
Well, I saw a meme.
Yeah.
I guess it was yesterday, and it said, "Do you think Canada feels like they're the upstairs neighbor to the
Meth
lab?"
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a meth lab neighbor. But
We actually have meth lab neighbors, though.
no, I do not.
Allegedly.
Moved out. Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff going on right now in the United States. As you know, kind of started in Minneapolis, and now it's actually nationwide.
Everywhere.
All 50 states since yesterday have taken in protests and or riots.
And there is a difference for those who don't understand.
Yes, there is.
There's a very large difference in a protest and a riot. Do you want me to elaborate, or you want to elaborate?
I mean, you
Okay.
do
It sounds like you got something to say.
Well, we keep seeing, especially the mainstream media, they're calling these peaceful protests with a little bit of violence.
Nothing says peaceful like a Molotov in a cop car.
No, but I mean, that's the problem, is that we're seeing so much violence, and it is a full-blown riot at this point. It's so totally devolved from what it has started as. And this thing, I'm not going to say I could totally agree with what it started as, but I had a lot of feelings towards what it started as.
Yes.
Because there was a crime committed, and we were protesting that crime. Now we're just stealing stuff and burning cop cars.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You can't put a sign on or tote a sign that says Black Lives Matter or whatever, and still a television, and it still be considered a protest.
No.
Now it's just, you're just being a thief.
And I mean, and that's the problem with it, is you're not even hurting the so-called enemy.
Correct.
You're hurting your fellow citizen. You're no longer effectively getting your point across. You're just hurting other Americans.
Well, and that's the problem we've seen, too, is how many people, especially when it first started in Minneapolis, were there to protest, and then it's like I've said in my own personal social media, people take advantage. I mean, people see there's a big group here, I can get away with whatever I want, and so, I mean, there's people that have not even a dog in the race.
Well, it becomes that mob mentality.
It exactly is. It's a mob mentality, and just like I saw today, I saw a report coming out of, I can't guarantee where it was. I want to say it was Chicago, where one of the alleged protesters had been arrested, and the police actually asked him, are you out here because of George Floyd? And he said, a little bit, but I really just wanted my monies, is the way he put it.
Well, that's what I mean. How are you honoring him?
Yeah.
By doing the thing that you're doing. When you're let me rephrase that. How are you honoring with rioting?
Yes.
With destroying property?
Yes.
And here's the thing. I've looked at a lot of stuff on social media, videos of him and stuff, and he was totally opposite of that.
Oh yeah.
He was very much about get a job, work hard, become something, and and don't get me wrong, I do not agree with what that police officer did in no way whatsoever. I mean, what he did, what he did, and those that participated with him in it, it was police brutality. It was unjustified in what they were doing, and and any policeman worth his salt will tell you the same thing.
Tell you the exact same thing.
That was too much aggression. That was too over the top with what they were doing. And this is the state that we're at now, that you can't even get that message out anymore, because nobody's listening to that now. What they're listening to now is the number of buildings burned down, the lives that have been lost in this.
Well, there were 5 when it first started. 5 Southern sheriffs come out from various departments and go in on those guys. I mean, not even just not condone what they did, but they went in on those guys.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Any good cop, and there are good cops out there, by the way. Any good cop will absolutely tell you that was a problem. There's no question about it. They messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't just mess up. They messed up to a degree that most people never even see.
That's right.
I pay attention, like on the news, when they show the different flags or the signs that the people are holding. And one of the ones that really caught my attention was, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. I agree. There is systematic racism does exist, and we're not going to pretend that it does not.
Right.
And as you said, what those cops did was wrong, but it's been going on for a while now.
Yeah.
And it's
a system problem. It's a system
exactly.
problem.
And I mean, it's one of those things, and I've discussed this before, I think with at least you, about the fact is that a lot of the same things have been happening all across the country, but it's only now with the meteoric rise that no one could have predicted of social media and third-party videoing of incidents that it even gets talked about. I mean, how many videos have we seen of just some guy across the street is how blurry the video is of anybody with police brutality. Not even just against minorities, but just brutality in general. And the only reason anyone found out about it is because some guy happened to be there.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, with the actions that are being taken right now, I know you want to change. I want to change. I want to see a change in a lot of things that are going on. But the actions that you're taking, you're not going to get that change. Mm-hmm. You're just going to fortify the already establishment that's there. And here's my question, and I'd love to be able to ask this, that, you watch the mainstream media and you see all these, these hundreds of thousands of people out there. I'd love to know, to ask them, raise your hand if you voted in your last election, whether it's county, state, city, federal, whatever. Well, that's the problem. You want a change, but you want to do the things that can affect that change. Yeah. You sit back. It's kind of like the person that sits back and just gripes and complains, but never changes anything. That's what they're doing, and you're not going to get your message across that way. All you're going to do is number one, divide people on this issue, and we've seen that. And and we talk about that we try to stay in the middle of all this, but the problem is that middle swerves so much, and and that's the issue that you have when you have things like this come up. I've said all along, I support the law enforcement 100%, but I don't support bad cops.
No.
And what happened was that was an act of a bad cop, and it was it was unjustified, it was unwarranted for what took place, and in reality, I'd say that a good majority of these major cases that we've seen in the last decade, this is one I can say that I feel like that was 100% on the police.
Yeah.
A lot of the other ones I've looked back and I said, well, if you'd done this, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. If you'd have complied. That's one thing I always say, if you would have complied, and don't get me wrong, I will never know what people of color go through. No. In this country, I'll never know that. Do I consider that white privilege? No, I don't. That is a made up liberal thing that they've used to try to because here's the thing, I grew up in the South.
Yep.
I grew up in housing authority.
Ain't none of us had privilege.
I grew up. We've talked about this. I've grown up not eating at night.
Yeah.
So I understand what poor is. I understand what not having something is.
Come up, bread sandwich, no bread.
But I still will never know the level that someone of color does. And the fact is that, when you compound it with accusations, just because they walk into a room, the mental thought that goes through when they walk into a room, and I'm not sitting here saying I do, and I never will.
And
But
here's the thing with that statement in itself: we'll never understand what they go through. They'll never understand what we go through.
that's true.
Neither one of us will ever understand what Hispanics go through. Neither one of us will ever understand, what Asians go through. None of us at this table will ever understand what women go through, and women will never understand what men go through.
That's true.
Because you don't have that actual life in front of you. You just see it from the outside in.
Well, it's like, it's been years ago, but there was an episode of South Park, actually, for anyone that watches it knows, they kind of commentate on anything. They'll go in on anybody. And there was an episode, I know you all know which one it is if you watch, where Stan's dad gets in some heat. And Stan keeps trying to tell Token, like, I get it. He's like, you don't get it. And by the end of the episode, he's like, I get it. I don't get it. And I'll never get it. He's like, now you get it.
Yeah, and that's the point. You can say you understand these people, and you can empathize with these people, and you can sympathize with these people, and you can sympathize with each other, and you can empathize with each other. There's differences, show compassion, and I highly encourage that.
Well, there's a difference between empathizing and understanding.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Empathizing is showing that you feel emotion for a situation that person's going through. That's wonderful. That makes you grow as a human being. Because even if it's between the four of us and you're going through something, or you're going through something, I have some sort of way that I'm feeling about that.
Yeah.
And depending on what the situation is, those feelings differ.
Yeah.
But I am empathizing with you.
Yeah.
And I can always do that. Just like I can always empathize with any of my other friends, or with literally any situation. But I can never understand some situations.
I saw. I was actually watching the news before I came over here to do this podcast. There was a young girl in LA. It was live. There was protests going on, and I went up and interviewed she was a young girl. And she made a statement. She goes, "You can't be in the middle on what's going on right now." She goes, "You're either with us protesting, or you're against us entirely."
That's a false statement.
That's not true. And they asked me, well, RD, where you stand at? I stand with the Constitution. I believe that every American, it is their birthright to protest whatever they want to protest.
To protest.
Now, with that being said, I also believe it's a right to bear arms, the Second Amendment. Small businesses and stuff like that should be able to defend themselves in the midst of a riot like we've been seeing in St. Louis, Chicago, and everywhere else. But
Well, it kind of goes back to what we were saying last week. Your rights begin where my rights end.
Mm-hmm.
And my rights end where yours begin.
Yeah, take it out on the system if you're going to take it out at all. In an ideal world, it never gets to that point. But if you're going to take it out, don't take it out on your fellow man who has no dog in the race.
No.
old man Joe down the road has a pocket knife shop. Don't burn down his shop just because you're mad at the system.
Well, it's like I saw, I think it was in either Tennessee or Georgia 1. There's apparently some controversy over this small shop that's sort of a Confederate heritage shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a video of the owner of that store and a black gentleman that were just having open discussion and discourse. And at the end, they were shaking hands and they all had a good time and it was all peaceful and good. Of all the places to be targeted, that would be one with a giant target on his back just because of the stigma that shop has. And yet the people that were there decided that it was better to have dialogue than to start burning stuff down. And now contrast that with people in minority neighborhoods that are equally affected by everything going on, and their businesses are getting burned down. You know, restaurants and barbecue joints and pawn shops of small business owners. You know, like I said, it should never get to that point that it's at. But if it's gonna get there regardless, don't take it out on your fellow man. Don't take it out on somebody who is an individual. You know, they're not the system out to get you, or they're not anything like that. They're just an American. They're just like you. You know,
they worked hard to build that business up, and we don't know. Maybe it took everything that they had to build that business up. Like you remember the riots of April 29th, 1992. Rodney King. Mm-hmm. Watching a video that burned down a black gentleman's computer shop. Mm-hmm. he's going out there crying and stuff and asking them why he did this, and he came from nothing just like the rest of them did, and why did he get his shop burned down or destroyed? I mean, it's going back to what you said. It's not right. Don't take it out on your phone. Just
Well, and we all have our different opinions on everything, and we
yeah.
could sit here and debate or argue about it all day. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree on that. That simple fact.
And with that being said, a man shouldn't be prosecuted for defending his place of business.
Absolutely not.
No.
I mean, you brought up 92, so we've been talking about it all day. Might as well talk about it here. The Roof Koreans of 92.
And they're back.
They're back. They're now the Roof Koreans of 2020.
Dusting off the K1As.
And that's wonderful. That is a brother in the Second Amendment right there.
Oh, yeah.
And he is doing everything he has to do to protect his livelihood and his family. And there is nothing that I can argue with that.
Well, I shared a post. It was one talking about the guy. It was him and I guess his brother or cousin or someone related to him. And he was like, the Roof Koreans are back. And it was a picture of them up on the roof. And I just shared it and I said, you're getting roasted at the gates whenever you get up there and find out that it was a Roof Korean with a dusty M14 that sent you.
What was it? Ted Nugent that actually tweeted out.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Now you understand why the reason we need AR-15s and AKs with 30-round mags." He goes, "Just take a look at what's going on right now."
Well, that's one thing I've seen from a lot of anti-gun people talking about the fact that the protesters that are getting lumped in with the looting and the rioting and being affected by that because of just the confusion going on, and how many of those situations are prevented because responsible Second Amendment practitioners, gun owners that have gone out that agree with the cause that have just stood with them with their and the people want to discuss the fact that they didn't do anything about the people that stormed the Capitol or stormed their state governor's office with ARs. Well, they didn't do anything about it because they had ARs, right?
Because they had weapons.
Equal and opposing force really puts a sour taste in your mouth to start shooting.
Not to mention too, the fact is that they didn't break a law neither about what they done. There was no laws broken when they did that.
They were well within Second Amendment rights, the right to assemble.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, they actually tried to shut down the right to assemble in that particular situation because they were trying to label the gun owners as domestic terrorists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can't do that.
No, you can't. You can't just say, this person owns a gun, they must be a domestic terrorist. That's not how that works. We have a Second Amendment right to own that gun, and in defense of ourselves or in defense of our property, use that gun.
Well, like I said, that's one thing that's kind of warmed my heart through all this is how many people I've seen that have been vehemently anti-Second Amendment that have gone through this and been like, well, I get it now.
No,
Yeah.
I understand.
Like people that are like, I never thought it would come to the point where I wanted to get a concealed weapons permit, but I'm going to do that today.
And this has had effects all across the board with that. I was reading an article yesterday on I don't know if you call it an article on Reddit. I was reading it, and it was a person in the state of California talking about the fact is that he is hearing so many cries now from the citizens of the state of California for the right to own firearms,
To repeal all
to be able to repeal those things so that they can own firearms to protect themselves and things like this.
That's infringement in itself.
And so, there's a lot of people starting to get woke. The ideal that there's more to this gun ownership than what they've been told in the media.
Exactly. This is not about, I've got this gun, I've got this AR, whatever. It's about situations like this where you are being infringed upon, either by your fellow man tearing your business up or by people coming in on you wrongfully or whatever the case may be. And all that said, I'm so happy that these people are getting woke. Don't be Joe Bob, who's, I'm shot my daddy's 22, I'm going to go get me a hog leg. And no, if you're going to take the step to get a weapons permit, great, I applaud you. I'm so happy you decided to become part of this community. Get training. Educate yourself. If you don't have the money to go take a formal class, YouTube. I've got videos up personally. I think the channel has some videos coming up about certain weapons platforms, and there are loads of Pro 2A channels all over YouTube. I could sit here for the rest of the podcast and name them that have videos up right now of quick rundowns of pistol, rifle, whatever the case may be, how to use it safely. Educate yourself. Don't be a statistic. Don't go buy a gun and then contribute to the false statistic that people are out here running around with no idea what they're doing. Because there are people out there that are running around.
Mm-hmm.
It's a smaller degree than the media would have you believe, but it does exist, and it is a problem, and it's a problem that sits really sour with me, being who I am in the 2A community and what I do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you've got to get that training, you've got to get that know-how, because a gun is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Just like any other tool, if you don't know how to use that tool, you are going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt someone else.
well, if you don't know how to use it, don't be using it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times here in the shop I've been like, I need this done, and one of y'all's like, we'll do it. And I was like, I don't know how.
And then at that point, that is a learning moment. But if you're not in a situation where you have someone there who can teach you, or you can't access these different resources, there are several communities out there that do weekend training, and it's reasonably cheap. I wouldn't say it's just the cheapest thing you'll ever get into, but it's reasonably cheap. Some of them ranging from your $50 range all the way up to your $150s, and you can go out there and you can get training for $3,000, but you're not going to be using that training.
Well, one resource that is available, especially here in the South, so if you're here in the South, I would urge you to look into this. Even if you're not religious, link up with a church. I know many church families, with the rise of church shootings, have brought in police to train the church families free of charge. And if you're a woman, because I know we do have some female viewers, there are a lot of police departments that have training for women that is free. So there's a lot of resources out there to get training for cheap or free if you can't afford.
We're all American. Use your God-given right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and that's the thing. That's what you got to remember with that too. It is a God-given right. It is not a right given by the government.
It is
nobody can take that
intrinsic.
away. And if they try, it's an infringement. California.
You really gonna throw some shade at California?
Chicago,
Shade.
New York.
Yep. Papa's naming them all off.
And not even
You know who you are.
not even necessarily guns. Just the right to protect yourself and feel secure. Now, guns is a facet of that. It's a tool for that.
Well,
but just the right to feel like you're able to take your life in your own hands and not have to rely on somebody.
Well, I mean, that one right there in particular, just guns in particular, goes back to the old saying, God made man, Samuel Cole made him equal.
Made them equal. Yeah.
And that's the truth. You're looking at these situations that we've got going on today, and you've got 30, 40, 50 people rushing a singular guy.
Yeah.
You can't tell
With
me
a
that's a
baseball
fair
bat.
fight.
Yeah, with a baseball bat.
You cannot tell me that's a fair fight.
Well,
But
so
you give that man an AR-15, an AK-47, a semi rifle, any semi-automatic, and it's a fair fight now.
Oh yeah.
Well,
that's,
number one, it's not a fight because they're not going to rush that man.
No.
That's holding that. I mean, that's already been proven time after time with these recent riots.
Mhm.
The fact is, that these mobs and rioters and I might say protesters. I'm saying the ones that are causing the problem, the criminals of all of this. They, it's literally like watching a stream come to a rock. They recognize that there's armed civilians there, and they just roll right on past them, and they don't stop there because that changes. Bullet beats brick every time.
Well, even right the opposite, when you've got rioting going on and your protesters are here and it's all just confused, and you have a police officer, be it a good cop or a bad cop, your adrenaline gets pumping, you just see a crowd, you start popping that tear gas off. It gives you about 5 to 10 seconds to stop and go, do I want to shoot tear gas that way? When you see a group of people standing there not really doing anything, and in front of them is just a line of 2A practitioners. I mean, not to say go out and shoot cops indiscriminately, because that's a problem too. I'm just saying that in a situation where you're acting on instinct, a gun will make you stop and go, wait a second, and use your human brain instead of your animal brain, your lizard brain. I mean, we all have those two brains, right? We've got our thinking brain and our lizard brain. And in times like this, most people default to that lizard brain, right? Well,
you've got actual thought process and you've got instinct. If you want to break it down to human and lizard brain for whatever reason, I guess you can call it that.
Why did you choose lizard?
It used to be monkey brain. I don't know why he changed it.
Why did you change the lizard?
well, have you ever seen a lizard? Have you seen how lizards act?
Most of them sit around and do nothing under a heat lamp.
Yeah, and then you walk up to them and they go,
Right? Well, dogs act on instincts as well.
And so, anyway, we're not going to roast me. We're going to talk on the topic here. And the fact is,
I don't know. Having a whole lot of fun roasting you.
the fact is, you see the barrel of a gun that you're going to have to assume is hot, and you go, hold up, let me get back in the pilot seat here,
Well, you gun bad, bullet worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's just like we saw with that video you sent me. About 30 or 40 trying to rob a jewelry store. 2 shots, and there ain't nobody trying to rob a jewelry store no more.
Yeah. And that was the Roof Koreans.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Guys,
No, it wasn't the Roof Koreans. This happened in Georgia.
Which one? You sent me one with the Roof Koreans, wasn't it?
Well, it was an Asian jewelry store.
Yeah, but it happened in Georgia.
Okay.
There is the Roof Koreans, quote unquote.
Well, the one I saw, I thought was the Roof Koreans, but
Yeah.
it may have been someone else.
No, it was in Georgia.
Either way, 2 shots dispersed 30 people about to take out a store, and to my knowledge, they didn't even hit anybody.
I don't know.
I don't think they did.
But I mean, you hear that pop, and again, you jump back in the pilot seat real quick.
I mean, that's all it takes, really. And that's protecting your right, that's protecting your home, it's protecting your family.
And again, we're not saying go out and fire indiscriminately. Don't be the guy that stole an M4 out of a cop car and shot into a crowd. We're saying if you are threatened and your life's on the line and your livelihood's on the line, that's the time, right?
Yeah.
Use your human brain as well.
Yeah.
Don't run around with a gun and use your lizard brain, right?
But
Dog brain, fish brain, pick an animal. I don't care. It applies. Giraffe,
I
that's
don't
your
know if fish
favorite.
brain applies.
The fish just sits there, right?
but something made me realize, like during the midst of all this happening, I'm proud that people are like expressing their constitutional rights.
Yeah.
It makes me happy as a constitutionalist to
Well,
see people protesting, people having guns, people defending the castle law, and it's just
Well,
good
that's
time.
the thing. Exercising all of your constitutional rights.
Yeah.
I love to see the protest, even if I don't agree with the protest.
Mhm.
I love to see the protest.
Mhm.
And that's not even in particular this protest. I love to see all protests, even if I don't agree with said protest, as long as you're doing it correctly.
Well, and here's one: the right to not be incriminated.
Yeah.
We're talking about the people that popped off shots. Notice we didn't name names. That's not because we're protecting their identity. We don't know,
I don't know who they were.
and it's their. We have no reason to know.
Don't care. You protected your property. Congratulations, you did a good job.
You shouldn't be prosecuted for it.
Nope.
With that being said, know your rights, get your education and training on all your weapons,
Yes.
and I'm going to slide it over to Jordan.
Well,
because
real
he's gonna
quick on
protect-
that note, if you happen to be sitting in the crowd and you are Joe Bob that shot Daddy's 22, applies to you too, man. Don't become a statistic.
No. But I'll take it over from there. Now, the topic that I'm bringing today is another very government topic because it's been on my mind a lot. We touched on it last week, and I said that I was bringing it, so you should already know what it is. It's the problems with the two-party system.
Wrong.
Wrong.
It is wrong. I mean, we were never designed to work as a two-party system.
From the beginning, it said stay out of foreign policy and foreign affairs, and don't become a two-party system. That was the 2 things that came down from old
Well,
George W. himself.
Yep. In his farewell speech. And and that the biggest problem with the two-party system, especially as it stands today, is that we have such a limited choice. We no longer see really out there politicians. We see one that is on one side of the fence and one that is on the other. We don't see anyone straddling that fence, really giving us a middleman. I'm a Republican. That's how it is right now. It's not because I'm a Republican, it's because morally I align with Republicans right now. If that were to change in the near future, don't really see it happening. But if that were, I would vote where I morally stand.
Yeah.
And that's the other problem is that we've picked sides of this race like it's a sporting event.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer sit down and go, all right, what is this person's policies? Because that's what we're voting on.
Mhm.
We've sat down and went, am I blue or red? That's what I'm voting on.
Well, what was it? Podcast 2, podcast 3 that we discussed the fact that it's about that middle ground and we just don't have it.
Mhm.
And even not even necessarily the middle ground as far as the camps, but I mean, just look at this table. We've got 2 varying degree of Republican. We've got constitutional libertarian. We got anarcho-libertarian. We've got a pretty diverse group of people, and I know Pops has talked about. There's a lot me and him disagree on, but we both understand that the two-party system screws us both in the long run, regardless of our agreement.
I just think you're silly. I don't think it is.
All right, everybody. I do apologize, but I'm going to let Dad take over this section. I've got somewhere I have to be.
There was probably a cut there you noticed, and you may notice one of us is missing. Not going to get into it, but Jordan had somewhere to be. So we're gonna venture on, and if you're part of the club, the club takes care of itself, and we're all here for everybody. So just remember that, remember Jordan, and whatever it is he has me doing. It was kind of urgent, so just bear with us. We apologize, but he has some more important to figure out.
So I'm going to attempt to pick up where Jordan left off with probably the two-party system in America, and he's right. I mean, it's become a thing where we're constantly glued to these three-letter news networks now, and it's like we don't even care what the policies are anymore. Like you said, it's either you're red or you're blue.
Well, I saw vote blue no matter who.
Yeah.
No, don't do that, or red for that matter. Don't vote just because of a color.
Well, I mean, that's what you've got into, and you see it more and more, especially in bigger elections.
Mm-hmm.
That they have that button that you can push that it just automatically votes all Democratic or Republican candidates.
Yeah.
And you see that happening a lot. People just pushing that, and and my thing is, like I said, I'm a Republican. I'm a Republican because their views line up the closest to mine. And the fact is, but I would never go down through there and just say, I'm voting all Republican. But with that being said, most of the time, if there is a change in my voting, it's usually for an independent.
Yeah.
Because the fact is that the Democratic side, as it is right now, doesn't line up anywhere close.
Yeah, not even
to
a
what I
moderate
believe.
to your beliefs. Really.
Yeah, it's not even close
Not
to
even
it.
mine either.
Well, and that's the thing. I personally have voted on a ticket that was a very mixed ticket. I'm not afraid to share that. And here's a hot take that I have. You can disagree. I'm sure someone here at the table will disagree. I believe, personally, my right to believe, that not out of laziness, but seeing your candidates and going, I don't agree with either of these people. I think it's a vote to not vote. Intentionally.
That's your right.
I think it is a vote to say I don't agree with either of these people, and I know that you may consider my vote being thrown away, be a Republican or a Democrat. I don't care. If I don't agree with either person, yes, one of them will be my president, and I will call them my president regardless of how much I agree or disagree. But I can say proudly at the end of the day that I did not personally contribute to that person being in charge.
I'm glad you said that. I know there's a lot of stuff going around, not my president or something like that. He is, and whoever is to come will be. Whoever was. It's our duty as an American, no matter who the president of the United States is, he is or she is a representative of the people.
Well, you got to recognize the office, not the person.
Yeah. And
it's not an empty chair, regardless of if you agree with who's in the pilot seat. But again, if you disagree with who's in the pilot seat, you have options. You can choose to not contribute to that. You can choose to, I know people say it as a joke, but you can choose to leave. There are plenty of countries with open immigration laws. If you really hate it here and you prefer where they are, they will welcome you. I know that might not be practical. I know that is an extremely extreme step, but it's your right to decide to leave if you want to. I'm not saying get out of here if you don't agree with us. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you legitimately feel that the state of this country is so bad that you can't be here, don't be here. Don't put yourself in that position.
And when in America did it become a thing where we look to the president or anybody in charge as that's my leader, that's my demigod, they're going to save me? You're your own individual. You shouldn't have to look at a senator or a governor or a mayor or president, for that matter, to quote unquote save you or help you with anything. Because like I just said, he's a representative, or she is a representative of the people, and that's all that they are. They are not a leader. And
They're
I've
here to
talked about that in
represent
a previous
you.
podcast, and just
And if they don't represent you, it's time to start thinking about ways to change that. I've said here in the very recent past that we talk a lot about North Korea, and we talk about how awful they have it, how horrible their life is. I don't know if you realize it, and I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination we're anywhere close to North Korea right now, but every day we get a little closer because we're handing them that authority. When you see, why don't they fight back? Why do they just let it happen? Why do we just let it happen? Why do we just sit back and go, well, that's our leadership, so we can't do anything about it? No, they're not a dictator. They're a representative. They answer to us, last I checked.
They still do. Some of them may think that they are above everybody, but in term limits, I'm gonna mention that in a podcast to come. But term limits, I don't think any seat in any government should be a career.
Period. Any of them.
No.
Well, my thing is, if the highest seat, the president of the United States, has a term, then everybody should have a term.
That's right.
Everyone.
You get 4 years, and then the people get to choose if they want you for another 4 years, and then you're done. You go home, you go back to your farm, you go back to your business, do whatever you need to do, but you're done.
And when did we start, and this is another tangent, but it's a tangent I'm passionate about, when did we start making our politicians millionaires? Now, I'm not saying don't take care of them. I'm not saying don't support them. You look at your pastors. Pastors get an allowance normally, so a lot of churches have a house attached to that church that the pastor lives in. They take care of them. Absolutely, we should take care of our politicians. There is a quote, heavy is the head that wears the crown. It is supposed to be a burden. There are many fantasy novels. I'm big into that, and one of my favorite series, I won't name it, but there's a talk about the fact that there's a king in one of the factions in the novel. There's a king, and his seat, his throne, is carved out of this hard granite, and it's carved in such a way that there's no sitting position you can sit on that throne that is comfortable. It is always in the back of your mind, just a sharp pain sitting there. That's how it should be. It should not be this cushy, I have immunity, I am God, I am the ruler of all. No. That's not what it should be. We should not be glorifying and deifying these people. It should be a job that no one wants, but that good people take up the burden. And that's what it was at the beginning. George Washington didn't want to be president. I don't know if you knew that.
No,
He did not want that responsibility at all.
Well, actually, the Continental militias and the colonials actually wanted to make him king.
Yeah, and he was like, absolutely
He was
not.
like, no, we just literally just fought over this.
And that's the way it should be. There should not be a fight to be a politician. We should be having to hunt people to represent us. The job should not be so cushy and so powerful that you get in and you're set for life. That's not what it should be about at all.
And if you're going to take on that leadership role, you need to know what you're doing. Listen to the people. I'm not saying don't converse with the other politicians. I mean, get some experience. I mean, get some internal knowledge from them. But listen to the people. What do the people want? What do the people have to say? People should be your number one priority. And that's one of the big steps of becoming a good leader. And Pops, I think you actually got a topic on actual leadership today, right?
I do.
Sweet. I'll let you take it from here.
Well, just adding to that, though, you made a comment, when did we start making our politicians millionaires? We never did. Lobbyists did.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the things, that goes back to what we was talking about earlier with the system and the corruption that's inside the system. You can't fix a corrupt system. There is no fixing a corrupt system.
Nope.
There has to be something in its place
Yeah, you have to change it.
that you have to replace it with. And one of the things that you see here, that when you start looking on the government side of it, when you start looking into that, is the fact is that now you're starting to see that it's lobbyists that are controlling the country. And the fact is, they're the ones that are persuading these people. That's what I talk about. They say, man that enters the role of politician isn't corrupt. The job will make him corrupt. And and that's and that's the reality of it. And I'm not going to be hypocritical sitting here and saying, oh, if you elected me to be a senator or a congressman or whatever, I would never take any money. I would never do. I don't know if I would or not. I'm not there.
I know I would.
I mean, it's one of those situations where if, man hands you a box full of money and says, hey, I need you to vote on this pork bill that's coming through, or, pulls up with a trunk full of bacon, because, I like me some bacon. And so, I mean, that would be something that would be, enticing.
Well, and that's the problem, right? I've said for a long time that you can take a good man, put him in a power position, and turn him into a bad man. I firmly believe that there are many politicians to this day that go into politics with a good heart and with good intentions. But they get in and they start getting these things dangled in front of their face. And like I said, I'll be honest about it. If I was running for Senate or whatever, president, and someone came up to me and said, I'll give you $1 million if you'll do this, I'm taking it. It's $1 million. All I have to do is sign a piece of paper. it should never be an option for me to have that temptation in the first
Well,
place.
see, well, that goes back to what I said. If you implement term limits on everyone, then it becomes more difficult for a lobbyist to be able to keep a control on a certain district or a certain senator or congressman or president or anything like that. The fact is, because now there's a new one rolling in 4 years, or there's a new one, rolling in whatever term you set for it.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, these career congressmen and senators, this is a problem, and the fact is that because they get into this position, and and here's the sadness of it. I'm not going to name any names, but one of them's initials, NP. But they stay in there. They stay in those positions to the age where they're almost senile.
Well, they're out of connection with what's going on. Right?
They don't have, they talk about, I'm here for my constituents. You don't even know who your constituents are anymore. Because evidently you've forgotten them. Evidently you've forgotten what they really want. You may have a special interest group that you call your constituents, and they're the ones that you're pushing all the time. But actually, the men and women who live in your district, who abide by the things that you come up with or the rules that you set in place, you're not listening to them.
No.
Well, here's a problem too that term limits fixes.
I think NP got him a little bit too much of the JD.
but here's a problem too that will be fixed by the term limits is the fact that you've got this career politician that's got big money in their back pocket. But the problem is now you have someone running against them and you think, oh, things are going to change. They're not, because guess what's happening? Someone else putting money in that person's pocket goes, if you'll just do what I tell you,
That's true.
and I'll give you this money, once you get that seat, I'll make sure you keep that seat.
I would love nothing more to see like the House of Representatives and the Senate to change every 4 years.
Yeah.
New faces, new people. I mean, that's the way the forefathers intended it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, and here's the
to me,
problem.
that would be exciting.
Here's the problem too with these career politicians, and I think the youngest person on Supreme Court is like 70 at this point. I'm not saying that old people can't be tech savvy or up to current events, but there comes a certain lens that growing up in a certain period of time gives you. We talk all the time about how Pops plays video games with us, and he does, but there's a certain lens through which he views and the way he plays that none of us do. And that just comes from his age and just the way he looks at things. It's nothing against him. There's nothing wrong with that.
He said you're bad at Call of Duty.
I'm not saying that. He does way better than me at Call of Duty because I grew up in a much more fast-paced, younger environment. Me and his youngest son both, we like the Bulldog. We like to get in there and just go, go, go. That just has to do with how we came up and how we were playing. There's nothing wrong with either of them, but in the context of politics, your lens affects the way you think. And sometimes you need a fresh lens. You don't need a lens from 1930. We don't need a lens of someone who's been through every war almost that America has ever had and thinks that you can still buy a hot dog for a penny. Like
Well, you can't.
you can't. No, that's the thing that doesn't exist anymore.
I'm more of a bologna sandwich kind of guy.
Now, you can probably get those for a penny, but it's just something to think about. And I'm not saying that you can't have an older person that isn't good. I know people that are living a wood shack, no electricity, out by a creek that I've spoken to and just been floored by their wisdom. We need older people on the seat, but we also need that fresh mentality. You need both, is what I'm trying to say. We don't need to just get rid of everybody and put in a bunch of 20-year-olds. That's a terrible idea. But at the same time, we also don't need everyone to be sitting 100 years old on the wise council, witch hunt, burner. We can't do that anymore. That's a thing that doesn't exist anymore. What?
Pops, we apologize for hijacking your
I'm
topic.
just sitting there thinking about it. So the lens is what we're using now. It's my problem.
We need new glasses.
The lens that I've got a lens problem. I see what it is.
And that wasn't throwing shade at Pops. He just happened to be an age example I could give. You know me, I like to use examples even if they don't necessarily
Still not helping. Still not helping at all.
But it is something to think about.
Let's move on to something else, a little bit more, I guess you'd say lighter, but still it's informative and a little bit of educational thing. I've been doing this thing here in the last 3 or 4 podcasts where I've been discussing things that help you better yourself as a man, to give you a skill set, if you want to say, to be better as a man, as a father, as a husband, and all these things. And one of them that I want to touch on tonight is how to be a better leader. You know, being a leader is something all great men should want to be. And, you know, it's important that we strive to do that. You know, a lot of people say, well, I'm the guy that sits in the back. Well, that's not what we need now. Especially when you look at what's going on now. Especially when you look at what's happening right now. We need more men to step up and say, you know what, this ain't right. We're not going to do this. We're going to change what we're seeing here. And your ability to influence and to lead others says a lot of what kind of man you are. Are you a sheep, or do you follow? Are you a follower, or are you a leader? And if you're going to wear the moniker as the man, you need to be a leader.
Well, you've heard it said, lead, follower, get out of my way, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it says a lot about, you know, what kind of man you are. But it also determines a lot of how successful you're going to be in life. It really does. I mean, your ability to influence people. And when I say influence, don't take that as I'm saying manipulate. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that you should be somebody that's shady, that does underhanded things to influence people. And unfortunately, we have a lot of that now. And this is more what the fact is when I get into it further, your responsibilities and your characteristics are portrayed in a fashion that it makes people want to be like you and be around you. You know,
there's good influence.
Yeah. You know, and we've all been around good and bad leaders. I mean, we really have. And it's so important that you be a good leader. No one person has ever accomplished anything. It takes a team. Anything of significance has been accomplished by a team at one point or another. You know, we talked about that before, about the fact that there's no self-made men. And and whether it's your family, whether it's your job, whether it's your community, it is so important that as a man, you're the leader of it, and that you lead those things. And at some point, you'll be called upon to lead. You know, that's the reality of it, and you know that's the thing that I want you to look at. And the fact is that, you know, there's responsibilities that a leader has, and the first responsibility is home. You know, i.e., you know, your family. You know, you're a husband, you're a father. You know, your family is looking to you to help them get to where they need to go. You know, and every day that's put on you. You know, marriages and our children have a stronger likelihood of being successful if we as the man is a leader or are leaders. It just changes the dynamic of the household. It changes the way that things are looked upon. You know, when things go bad, you look to dad. When there a decision needs to be made, you look to dad.
Yeah.
When your wife is needing an answer on something, she should be able to look to you, and you be able to give that answer.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be something like, and even I do this to a certain extent, and from time to time dealing with my wife. Well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to do?
Where you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat?
And you do that a lot, and but we also have an understanding that, you know, I get final say in what we do.
Well, some of that too comes down to respect, right? Mutual respect. Like in my personal relationship, she has a hard time sort of taking charge of situations, and especially her own life. And she'll ask me, and I'll tell her, "You make the choice. You decide." You know, and that falls to, she's her own person. She has her own decisions to make. But yet at the same time, on big issues that need an answer, you got to give that answer, right? It's just how it is. On the minor things, you can do that. Oh, I don't know, what do you want to eat? And even if you end up making the decision, it's the fact that you offered the choice of that respect. But at the end of the day, you also have to be able to take up that leadership. It's a balance, and that's part of being a good leader, is recognizing that.
Yes, sir. Second responsibility is our community. You know, and this ties into what we've been talking about all this whole podcast. In fact, is, you know, our community is affected when leaders are absent. I don't care if it's local, if it's state, if it's county, if it's federal. When leaders are absent, that's when chaos is more likely to grow. That's when chaos is more likely to happen. And as a man, it begins with you at home. Communities thrive and grow stronger when they have strong leaders. And you can look at just for example, newscast. Watched the other day. All the rioting taking place. There's this community that they have the men of the community, and some of the ladies for that matter, but mostly the men of the community have taken on responsibility of themselves that they're protecting their community. They're not letting people in their neighborhood. They're not allowing that in their neighborhood, and it's working because they have chose to take a stand. They've decided that they're going to be stronger than the event that's happening around them.
Right.
And that's what being a true leader is. And instead of complaining about what's wrong, change it. That's one of the biggest things that we see today, and it just drives me nuts. Is you see so many people complaining. I don't like this. I don't like that. Well, if you don't like it so much, change it. Be the person that affects that change. But now here's the thing: change it in a positive way.
Yeah.
Not with rioting, not with burglary, not with arson, but change it in a positive way. I've said this several times. All this happened. Martin Luther King changed the world. He never threw a brick. He never burned down anything.
But he went out there and did something.
But he went out there. He organized. He became the leader that generation needed to see a change.
He didn't just sit and blog on Instagram. He got out there.
Yeah, he wasn't just sitting there putting up memes every 10 minutes about how terrible things was. He said, I'm going to change it. I'm going to get out and do it. To the point where he said, I will risk my life for my cause.
Unfortunately, he did.
He did.
Well, and that's the thing, too, talking about being a leader and a follower and griping. At my work, because it's shocking, I know, but we all have jobs outside of this right now.
I started back yesterday.
Yeah.
He's out of the wilderness.
We would love to make this our full-time job, and that falls to you, but that's for the end of the podcast. At my work, we have measurements in place still to this day with COVID, and some of that involves taking temperatures. And I can't tell you how many times a day when I'm having to take temperatures that I have someone gripe. Why do they need you out here doing this? Or sometimes the crowd gets bigger and they've got two of us out here. Why do you need two of you out here doing this? And we all agree, but it's a system someone put in place to deal with it. And my personal leader in that situation has had people make snide comments at him. And he will boldface stop them and ask, all right, hold on. All right, I get it. I understand it. This is not a good system. What would you do? If you're gonna gripe and you have
an answer.
Yeah, if you gripe and you're gonna gripe out loud, be expected to be called out for it, and you better have an answer. And if you don't have an answer, I'm not saying don't gripe. That's your right. Don't put it in my ear. Don't put it in my ear.
And that goes along with the next responsibility I had. We've talked about home, community, now it's your job. Whether you are the employee or the boss, you can be a leader in whatever role you play.
Yeah.
Your ability to lead inside your business comes down to is what you're doing and what you're saying, does it bring value?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of empty, what I call empty conversations, especially in the job place. And it kind of goes back to what you're saying. I don't like the way they've got me doing this. I don't like doing this. I don't like, well, what would you do different?
What would be better?
Well, I don't know. Well, then you don't have no value.
Yeah.
Your complaint and your actions is useless.
You're complaining for the sake of complaining.
Yeah, because you're not going to help us in any way because you don't have an answer for what's going on. And that you see it so much in the workplace today. Be a leader there. Come in and say, hey, I don't like the way this is. Research it.
Mm-hmm.
Find a way to change it. Give an idea or put input into something to see that that maybe something changed about it. You say, well, I just work here. I come in, I go to work. Well, that's the other problem.
Yeah.
Real leaders don't just occupy space.
Yeah.
They don't sit there and say, you know what, I clock in, and I do my 8 hours, and I go home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not going to be a leader that way.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to try to give value to my day. I'm going to try to give value to my job. And by doing that, you have to be willing to say, you know what, I'll do something that nobody else will.
Well, and that's a good point, talking about being a leader in your role. I come from the medical community, and I'm not going to sit here and speak as a tenured medic because I've not finished my schooling. I'm still in class. I still have tests to pass, and with COVID and everything going on, there's going to be some delay on that. But I can speak to what I know and what certifications I do have. And one of the certifications I have is through the CDC and FEMA. and there's an excellent leadership course that they have discussing event crisis and how to manage an event. And
in the National Guard, I'm having to take those FEMA courses right now.
so you know what I'm talking
And
about.
it's a pain in the butt.
Oh, it's like a 20-minute video of a guy in a suit and tie
Yes.
talking like this, but it has got good value to it. And one of the things they bring up is, you may not realize this, but in a crisis situation, you have your overleader that's pretty much the person that gets together everyone and says, all right, this is the crisis, this is what needs to be done. And then they start delegating. And that's one of the big parts of leadership is delegation. And then not micromanaging. And so when you get that delegate role, usually it's 5 people, because they say that the most one person can handle comfortably is 5 people in their chain of command. Now, you can handle more. 10 is stretching it pretty thin, but the bigger you get, the harder it is to get communication through and to be a leader. And if you are put into the goal of one of those 5 facets, it's on you to be a leader in that facet. And then if you're in their wheelhouse of 10 people that goes out, if you're distribution, if you're under the distribution guy and he puts you in charge of getting pallets of water, be in charge of getting pallets of water. Don't just sit around and wait for someone to tell you. Go out and do that job. Be the leader over getting pallets of water. If your job is wiping people's noses, be the best nose wiper you can get and lead the charge for all your guys so that they see, he's in charge of the nose wiping, and he's not just sitting there telling us to nose wipe. He's out here wiping noses too. It may seem like a demeaning job, but it's an important job. And if your leader can't do it, and that's something that a lot of great leaders have, I'm sure you'll touch on, is not just telling someone to do it, but getting out there and do it. I mean,
Lead from the front.
what we cut for? Oh.
We're getting bugs on the camera this one. Dang, go. I was like watching them, like one of them landed like right there, and I was like, whew. Can't see them all over, please.
All right, there was probably a cut there. We're having some heat issues, so there's some little gnats flying around. So if you see any of that on the screen, we do apologize. It's just something you got to put up with down here.
Had the door open so we didn't die.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the last part of this is the characteristics of a leader. We'll talk about the responsibilities, and then we're going to talk about the characteristics of a leader. Number one, the first characteristic, and these are not in order by any way, it's not 1, 2, 3, it's just different characteristics. You have to be a man of conviction. And when I say that, you have to have a strong why. Why are you doing this? Why are you leading us this way? If you don't have that, you won't be able to lead. You got to be able to say, you know what, I know that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I know this is what we have to do.
Yes.
Number 2, you got to be a man of vision. You got to be able to look ahead and see the end game. The greatest leaders in history, greatest leaders in any time in history, they could see the end game. They knew that there was an ending to what they knew, so they knew where they had to go. Now all they had to do was figure out how to get there.
We want this. What do we do?
And that makes such a big difference. The fact is that if you know where you're going, all you have to do now is figure out how to get there. And you've got half the battle beat. And that's important that we know that. Next thing you have to be a man of service. Great leaders serve first.
Mm-hmm.
Not thinking about, is this for me? But more about the fact is, how can I help others? With an attitude of serving people will follow you because they don't feel like they're being put under your thumb. They don't feel like that it's a waste of time because you are helping them along the way. Great leaders have that ability. They have the ability that they can serve others. Second thing, or the next one, man of action. You can't be the guy that says somebody else will do that. Somebody else will take care of that. Somebody else will handle that.
That's not my job.
That's not my job. That's the worst thing in a business job setting. The worst thing you could say as an individual is, that is not my job. Because what you are saying when you say that is, I do not care about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that gets on my nerves so bad when I hear that, especially if it's somebody that's telling it to me that's not my job. Well, honestly, I really don't do what you do. Just to be honest with you, I don't know what your job is.
Yeah.
But you have to be a guy. You can't be that guy that says, somebody else will take care of it. You have to lead by example. What you do always speaks louder than what you say.
Well, that falls right into what we were talking about don't ask anyone to do what you wouldn't do. One of my favorite stories, Great General Patton, in World War II. Fantastic man. And there was a time.
Was a meanie head, though.
Yeah, he was, but all of his men, when talked about, they respected him. Ooh. And there's a story that is one of my favorite stories, and it really kind of spearheaded what I try and think of when I'm having to lead. Their morale was low. It was late into the war, and there was trenches that needed to be dug and sandbags that needed to be laid down, and no one wanted to do it. And the order came down. He's like, "We need this done," and everyone's kind of just piddling around. Pops his shirt off. Got that corn-fed, not this Hollywood body, just a regular guy. He said, "Give me a shovel." And he got there and started digging ditches too. And they rallied around that.
Lead from the front.
Lead from the front. Don't sit behind the desk.
That guy was just awesome. Guy.
Such a cool dude. Taking shots with his pearl handle revolvers at the tank. Yep. If you haven't read up on him in depth, not just a history class, you want to talk about a leader? That guy was a leader.
Him and the 101st Airborne General, when the Americans were surrounded in Bastogne, German general issued a surrender for the Americans to surrender. He replied with nuts.
There was a Coast Guard guy too, and there's so many great leaders throughout history, but he's one of the only Coast Guard members to be awarded Navy honors because there was a time there was some islands and some posts that need to be taken, and I won't get into details because I don't want to misrepresent this man, but Coast Guard cutter, not outfitted at all for war. And he said, "All right, let's go get it." And he started taking it just by himself, just getting it, him and his ship, just go for it. Because it needed to be done. And they said, "You know what? We don't have a destroyer, but we got a boat."
Yeah. Next thing, you got to be a man of humility. Great leaders have a sense of humility. They understand that they don't have all the answers, but they also understand that their pride cannot be what stands in their way of getting that answer. They know that someone else has the skill set, has the knowledge that may even have the answer that they need to succeed.
Right.
You've got to have that humility about you because, even though you're leading, even though you're the man in charge, there's always a perspective factor. I've said it for years and years, especially dealing with coaching and things like that. The fact is that everybody sees an event differently. No matter if you're standing beside each other or what, there's things that you pick up on that I don't pick up on. There's things that I pick up on that you don't pick up on. So it's a perspective thing. You've got to be willing, if you're going to be a great leader, you've got to be willing to take everybody's perspective and say, "Hey, how can I involve this in my plan? How can I use this to move us as a team forward?"
Yeah.
And then the last one is a man of innovation. Sooner or later, there's going to come an obstacle. You're going to encounter a speed bump. You're going to have the ability to adapt and overcome that.
I was just about to say that.
Adapt, improvise, adapt, overcome.
And it's going to have, and it's going to be the difference between you succeeding and failing. Is that obstacle, that thing that's in front of you that stops you. So many people say, "Boy, I want to do this. I want to be a podcaster. I want to be a musician. I want to be an artist. I want to be a movie star. I want to be an athlete." But the thing is, nobody is willing to put in the work that it takes to get there. Like I said, I coached for 17 years. You know how many boys I heard tell me they're going to go to the NFL?
A lot.
Every one of them.
A whole lot. I remember.
Every one of them was going to go to the NFL. And I always told them the same thing. I didn't care if it was this tall or if they were 17 fixing to go into college. You will get out of this pursuit as much as you put in.
Yeah.
If you want to be an NFL football player, if you want to be a college football player, then you've got to be willing to do what it takes to get to that place in life, to that part of your plan. And most of the time, most people that say, "I want to," are not really saying that they want to. They're saying, "I would like to."
Mm-hmm.
Because when you want something, you will obtain something. But when you just like it, you like the idea of being a college football player, you like the idea of being in the NFL, you like the idea of being a celebrity, it just means that you entertain it.
Yeah.
You're not actually going to put the sweat in, but you're going to entertain the thought.
Well, that includes the dirty work too, right? And I'm not just talking about spending more time in the gym than anybody. I mean, I knew guys coming up that literally, they would burn it down dawn to dusk in there working out, getting themselves fit. If you're into the WWE wrestling like I am, there's a guy that many other athletes have asked, who should they put the belt on? Because in case you didn't know, it is scripted. And they all say it's just one guy. He spends.
You telling me Sweet Chin music ain't real?
Scripted, not staged. The athleticism is there, but obviously it's a show.
What?
And yes,
my entire universe.
And they and they asked him. They said, "Who should they put? Who deserves to have the belt on more than anyone?" And everyone said this one guy. He deserves the belt. He spends more time in the gym than anybody. He works harder than anybody. He deserves it. And it took until this past year for them to put the belt on him because
apparently he acts better than everybody.
Well, because he didn't have that acting. He didn't have that charisma, and that's what I mean. How many people put more physical effort in, but they don't take time to shake hands and kiss babies? That's part of it. You got to get the PR out there. There's a lot that goes into anything, and you can have all of one, but if you don't have the rest, you're never going to get there.
And then that goes back, like I said, there may be somebody watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, whatever, and they say, you know what, I want to be a good leader. Well, that's my next question to you is, are you willing to put the work in to be that leader? Because all great leaders out there, they were willing to put the work in. They were willing to do the things that nobody else would do. They were willing to look at things the way that nobody else would. And that's what being a great leader is, whether it's in your home, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your job, whether it's with friends. We don't think a lot of times about our friends, that somebody needs to be a leader with that. But here's the reality of it, and I've personally had this situation come up in my life. There's going to come a time that if you have a group of friends that you're close to, that one of those guys or one of those girls are going to ask you, what do I do? And at that moment, you better have an answer. You better have an answer, or at least an idea of what needs to be done, because they're coming to you in a time of need. They're coming to you in a time that they need some correction, they need some direction, they need something to make a difference. And they're trusting you with that. So if you're going to be a leader, you've got to be willing to sit down, analyze what you're hearing, make the decision, act on that decision, help that person in that decision, and be the person that they need you to be. Be the friend that they need you to be. And that's how you become leaders. A lot of these friendship groups have what they call the leader of them. And, a lot of times it's not because of their leadership ability. It's simply because of the fact that they can offer the group something. That's not true leaders.
Well, that goes both ways, right? I mean, you can be a leader and follow, right? I mean, because at some point when someone's leading, you got to follow. But then, too, you also have to lead. And a prime example, I know between us, there's been many times you've come to me at midnight, hey, man, I need this. And then right the opposite, I'll come to you and be like, look, what do I need to do here? It goes both ways.
Y'all don't call me at midnight. I'm in bed. Y'all don't call me.
I've asked you.
Wait till 4 in the morning.
I've asked you many questions at midnight or 1 a.m. on headset because I needed to know. And
there was times when I was in the military where I had a private or specialist come up to me. Hey, Sergeant, I don't know what's going on here. My sergeant said he didn't know, so he told me to come ask you. And I was like, man, well, I don't know either, so you need to go to that guy.
be willing to admit you don't know.
But fake it till you make it doesn't work in leadership. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't, because you get seen through really quick with that. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to TJ to bring us in wherever you bring it to.
Yeah, mine actually can kind of sit on the top of the leadership for a minute because it goes right in with what I want to talk about, and it's keeping the fire alive. And what does keeping the fire alive mean? Well, it means a lot of things. In the specific context I'm going to talk about, it has to do with what the foundation we've built through these podcasts. It sort of has turned into a series, these first few podcasts, more than just one-offs. And that was by accident. That was just a twist of fate that it happened that way. But
you guys liked it.
You guys liked it. We just kept running with it. And there will come a time, there will be a day that it moves away from the series. But right now we're in kind of a series. And that series has been manhood and keeping the old ways alive and the old traditions and just what it means to be a man and be a father and be a leader and be part of the tribe and how do you keep those fires alive. And one of those ways is being a leader. And again, a facet of being a leader is being able to follow, right? I don't want anyone that's going to be mindless. We're there's 4 of us here. We all have a say. We all have a niche. And we all have things we're better at and things we're not better at. They talk about a man of vision. I can tell you right now, that's me. I've got more vision than just about anybody I know, and I'm not trying to brag because that's also my downfall. We'll sit and be discussing the future of the podcast, and I'll be talking 10, 20 years down the road. And we've joked about it at me before of, well, let's talk about right now. And I was like, I understand that. We need to talk about right now. You guys have right now on lock. My head stays in the clouds. That's not a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing. And it's important to have both. And so that's why it's so good to have these fellow leaders to fall back on. That
lose sense of reality, bro.
Exactly. No, you'll find that I'm going to be the oddball every time. I've been militant. I've been straight up this past year. I was a bush hippie. That's a fun story for a later podcast. But there was a time when I was just super big into nature and going out and spirituality and just all this crazy stuff, but that comes back to my head stays in the clouds, And it's important to have a fellow leader to be able to say, I get where you're at. I understand that your head's in the clouds, and that's good to have, but also be grounded,
Speaking of which, we need to go back on our non-boog hikes.
Yeah, we do. We haven't done one in a while, and I've been missing it because I got that brand new set of nods that I get to demonstrate with you guys, so. But anyway, keeping the fire alive, and the fire, it's an idea. It's a metaphysical concept, and that metaphysical means it's not a real fire, right? It's a fire in your hearts. It can be a real fire. Traditionally, they'd use real fires, light the torches, Paul Revere, with the lantern. Fires die, right? Times go hard. It rains. You can get down to an ember.
Good example of a fire going on right now. Protest.
Yeah, the fire of America is flaming dull right now. How do we keep it alive? Well, I'm not saying that we can just sit here and put more wood on the fire and make it a big blaze and be strong. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that that's what we're going to be able to do because time has shown and the days have shown that it's just not. But what we can do is in the wake of this and in the fire going out, we can take an ember. We can take one coal that's still got some life in it, and we can take that coal and we can nurture it, and we can blow on it. And I don't know any of you who have ever started a fire, any of you out there that are hikers or naturalists or whatever the case may be, you know that you can start a fire with the smallest spark. You can start a fire with the smallest spark. Doesn't mean it's easy. I've been really big into survival shows here lately, like your dual survival, your Discovery Channel shows. And one of
your grills.
Yeah, one of my
to the wild.
One of my favorite guys is he's a naturalist, the old ways, the start fire with sticks, no tools kind of guy. And he'll tell you you can start a fire with a stick and a piece of bark. It's going to take you hours. It's going to take you work. Your hands are going to get hurt. And then once you get that coal, if you don't know how to nurture it and care for it and put tinder on it, it's just going to go out. And that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to take that coal and we're going to have to nurture it. And that applies not only to America, but to being a man. The fire of manhood is flaming dull right now. It's almost non-existent. We've seen this huge social enlightenment. But the thing with enlightenment, and I can tell you firsthand, being the head in the clouds guy, the spiritualist, the bush hippie, whatever. Enlightenment can be a bad thing, right? You can have a renaissance that sets you back. I mean, you look at ancient Rome. They were more advanced in ancient Rome than they were in the Dark Ages. Do any of you realize that the Dark Ages happened hundreds of years after ancient Rome?
Yeah.
Because there was a renaissance that happened that set them back. Not every enlightenment is a good one. And in the wake of that, what do? You have to be able to tend the flame. You have to be able to sit down and go, I know that this fire is weak and it's dull and it's kind of sad and it's beat up and it doesn't look like much. It's on us to not give up on that fire. I'm a big guy on using examples, and because I believe as a leader that the ideas of people that have came before are good to learn and to note. And Facebook poster, pretty big guy now, posted a video about he had two lighters. And he said, this lighter right here, clicked it, doesn't work. This lighter right here, clicked it, does work. He said, right off the bat, this lighter looks better than this lighter. But y'all may not know that this lighter sat out all night and become a rainstorm in the rain, the mud, and the dirt, and the grime. And you might give up on this lighter. But sometimes all it takes, and he lit the first lighter, and then click the second lighter. Now the second lighter worked. Sometimes all it takes is someone to reach out to that fire that's been sitting cold and dark. And we're talking about the fire of your spirit at this point, the fire inside of each individual, the willpower, the human will to thrive and survive.
Yep.
It can get beat down. I know it's been beat down in me so many times that I thought it was out. And one of my tribe came along and said, no, we're not going to have that happen. And you take another fire and you add to it and you start it up. And there's many ways to tend a fire. You can bring fire from another source. You can relight the fire. You can nurture a coal. It all falls back to what Pop said with leadership about not giving up. And that's what we're going to have to do for America as men, as an individual. Don't give up. If your fire is so low and dim and dark and wet that you think it's completely out, reach out. Find someone with a fire that's blazing strong. Ask to borrow a little bit of fire. You know, I've seen so many times people discuss depression and feeling weak for going to therapy or for asking for help. And there's many therapists that reference this, and I agree wholeheartedly. You're not weak for reaching out. You're sitting here telling me that in your time of need, when things are dark and all your demons and all of the world weighing down on you is so heavy and just attacking you from all sides, that we have a visitor, that instead of giving up, instead of laying down and letting those things overcome you, you're asking, give me a stick.
He got a hat.
if all you can do is give me a stick, I'll fight with a stick. You know, you're sitting out here going, I'm in my darkest point and I'm still willing to fight. If all I've got is a tree branch, I'm going to fight with that tree branch. And that's what you got to do. Not even in the context of depression, but just in the context of what do you want? Your relationships, your job, your dreams. I can tell you right now personally that I've had so many setbacks from so many dreams that I've given up on because I didn't want them bad enough. Because I was not able, that when the time got hard and the going got rough, to sit here and go, I don't care. Give me a stick. Now, some dreams, you know, if they're not what you want, they're not what you want. And you can realize that in those times. But the rest of them, don't give up on. Don't let the fire go out. And again, this is such a broad topic. And I tend to have the broad strokes topics because that's just the kind of person I am. And it applies to so much. It applies to the country. It applies to your family. It applies to being a man. It's everything. It's all encompassing. Yeah. And I think it's so important that we don't just hide it. You know, there's little kids' Bible song. Do we hide it under a bushel? No. That's the fire of God, of religion. Same applies to all the rest of your fires. If you hide it under a bushel, guess what happens? It goes out. It can't breathe. Don't hide it under a bushel. Don't put it under a basket. Because that's the quickest way to snuff that fire out. And once it's gone, it's a lot harder to relight a new one than it is to take time and nurture the one that was already lit in the first place.
I'll tell you what, America right now definitely needs more than just a spark.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to need a whole can of gas.
Starter fluid.
Yeah. You need a whole lot more. I mean, like you said, unfortunately, it is dying. Toxic masculinity, we touched on that in the first episode. And everything's become so political now that people are afraid to speak up. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is we, like you touched on that first episode, we have people that want to speak up, but they're too scared. And that's where that whole leadership role comes into effect, that they're not stepping up. They want to be that leader, but they're too afraid to be that leader.
And they will hate you and persecute you because you speak the truth.
Yep.
It's another little biblical reference for you. And it's true. And that's not to say that toxic masculinity does exist, because it does. We've talked on what a bad man is. At the same time, it's one of those voices that, because of the backlash on those people, true masculinity, the fire of that, has started to die. Because toxic masculinity is one of those things that it comes in acting as though it's going to be a benefit to the fire, and when in reality it's just a bucket of water, right?
Are you mansplaining to me right now?
Yes, I am, because I'm a man. And on the topic of manhood, I will always mansplain, because that is within my purview. I will never speak on you or speak to you on what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a person of an ethnicity that I am not. But I will speak to you on what I am, and I am a man. And I am a traditional man. And I am all these many things that I've touched on just a minute ago. And I can speak from that experience. And I can speak to the good and I can speak to the bad. You know, I think everyone has had times that you've not been a good man or a good person in general. What do? You acknowledge it. You don't hide it. You don't try and snuff it out because it's just going to come back and it's going to put your fire out. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to be able to go, and I've done this myself, and apologize for when you were wrong, even knowing that the people you hurt may never forgive you. Because at the end of the day, it's not about them. It's about you. If you cannot forgive yourself and acknowledge what you do, that becomes trauma that sits in your subconscious, and it will affect the rest of your life for the rest of your life. Period. If you have something sitting in the back of your mind right now with me talking on this, something that you haven't let go, either someone you slighted or someone that slighted you, or something terrible that you've done in the past, ask for forgiveness. Because if you can't forgive yourself, regardless of the other person's feelings, you'll never be able to have a good fire going. There will always be something snuffing that fire out.
As the piano plays slowly, we just
Exactly. So it really is an invitation, because I know there's people out there that this is going to reach at some point. That I know it's kind of serious and heavy, and it seems silly with a lot of the jokes we've made, but you know we're the kind of people that we can joke on one hand and get serious on the other. And I feel like it's so important to send this message out and to just speak on the fact that as a man, it doesn't get talked about enough, but there's so much depression and mental health issues and things affecting men that never gets talked about and gets swept under the rug by this, oh, just be a man. Toxic masculinity, when in reality, being a man is being able to accept, I'm in a bad place. I'm not well. What do? You humble yourself. You reach out to those around you, to your fellow leaders that you know. I can't tell you how many times that I've asked Pops just simply, just pray for me. Didn't mention what it was, didn't know, but he could tell by the tone of my voice that it was serious. And I think that's important. And that goes if you're non-religious. If you're non-religious, you've got religious friends, ask them to pray for you. Because what better appeal to that person? I've talked to an atheist friend about this. When someone says they're praying for you, don't laugh at them. Because in their mind, their God is real. And that is they think so highly of you that they're going to reach to their highest power that they know to help you. That is the biggest gift they can give you.
Absolutely.
And right the opposite. If you have an atheist friend that says, man, I'm sending you positive energy or I'm thinking about you or whatever, take that. Because in their mind, that is the highest honor they can give you.
Well, that goes back to Pops, you mentioned humility.
Mm-hmm.
And a man has to have that moment where he has to swallow his pride. And unfortunately, that's not being seen today. But Pops, like I said, you gave a pretty good example of that a while ago. There's been plenty of times where I had to swallow my pride and be like, I have no idea what's going on.
I
need help.
I'm literally an ostrich with his head in the sand.
Pops, can you help me? TJ, Jordan, whoever. But I think with that being said, TJ, you got anything else?
Let me think. I don't really have anything serious. I've talked about everything I want to speak on this time. Think about it. Reach out. You know, comments. We've got our social media. You can DM whatever if you're going through some stuff. We'd love to help you if we can. We're all here for each other, you know, and it's important. That said, I think for our comments today, do a good turn this week. With all the craziness going on, do a good turn. If it's as simple as paying for the food of the person in the drive-thru behind you, or if it's big as changing someone's tire for them, do a good turn this week and then tell us about it, either on our Facebook or here in the comments.
Or stand up for somebody that can't stand up for themselves.
Yeah, do a good turn this week. Spread some positivity this week and show that the fire is still being tended by the people that care. That said, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for all of the updates that we've got coming out. I want to apologize again. Like I said before, it's a learning experience, especially for me with the social media. It's only going to get better. The snowball's building. We've got some great stuff in the pipeline for you guys coming up.
And I told you guys last episode that we will. It's happening this week, but I'll let you guys know the next episode. But it's super awesome. Can't wait for you guys to know.
Super, super big deal.
Yeah, super big deal. Pops, you got anything? I just want to let everybody know real quick, picking up off the last episode. As always, guess the flag. keep it put in the comments. I think your dad actually guessed it right.
Last week. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did.
Yeah.
It's a fun little side game to do.
We try to keep it light even when it gets heavy. That's just, again, the kind of people we are. We can be serious and then flip that coin. It's just how it is. That said, reach out to our socials. Our Instagram, and I'm actually going to pull on my phone because I have a terrible memory. So our Instagram, in case the links to the YouTube, for whatever reason, don't work, all lowercase, the Men's Club 2020. No special characters, all one word, the Men's Club 2020. That's going to be our Insta. Our Facebook is going to be our page. We actually have a page now. It's not just a person. Let's see here.
It should be right underneath your profile. Should be.
You pull it up. Mine's
Yeah.
not.
Sorry about that, guys. Let me get it pulled up for you guys, and I'll let you guys know real quick.
And then our Twitter handle. Our Twitter is Men's Club, capital M, apostrophe S, capital C, Men's Club.
Club official.
But if you, all right, so our Facebook page is the Men's Club Official. And then our Twitter, for whatever reason, Twitter adds like weird characters in the back. And apparently you can go in and change that. I'm working on figuring out how to do that. But for now, slow this down. Pause the video if you have to. It's at Men's CLU 955-245-42. Twitter did that. I did not do that. I think that's a terrible way to get your brand out there. But it is what it is. Again, as we move through these technical difficulties, wow, I'm having some speech difficulties right now. If you would, just reach out, like those pages. Content is coming. I know I keep saying that. It is. It's just a slow start. Anyone that has had any dealings with a podcast in the past or watches podcasts as they've started knows the first steps are always the hardest.
Yeah.
But you learn to walk and you learn to run. With that said,
Well, not this weekend, but the next weekend, I'm actually traveling to Arkansas, so I'll be uploading pictures also to the social media.
oh, fantastic. So that'll be
Get
good.
to see like all the stuff around Hot Springs, Little Rock, all the more important places, not where I'm from.
And that'll actually be, you'll still be present for the podcast then,
Yeah.
because we don't film
I'll
on
let you guys know
Saturday.
about the trip and pictures and take a trip out to Brewski's Pub and Grub, like I mentioned in episode 2.
Heck yeah, gotta support our people,
Yeah.
right? So, with all that said, guys, so thank you for being with us. Thank you for sitting through our soapboxes.
Yeah.
I hope it helped you. And once again, thanks so much. We're so happy to have you here and grow with you. I've been TJ.
I'm RD.
And I'm Pops. Till next time, ching ching pow.